welcome to another episode of Patriarchy Principles, the podcast where we dive deep into the intersection of faith, family, politics, and fatherhood. Designed with fathers in mind, we aim to shed light on the political issues that directly impact your household and mine, and guide you to taking informed, meaningful action. Grounded in Christian values, we explore what the Bible says about leadership, responsibility, and navigating the complexities of today's world. Join us today as we discuss how to protect and provide for your family, and every episode you do that as well, not just spiritually, but in every aspect of life. I'm your host, Jay, and today I have a truly special guest, old friend of mine, friend of the show, friend of the podcast, Jason Briggs. Jason is a 6th-degree black belt, so don't ask with him, journalist and a father of 2 who has decided his life is, who has dedicated, not decided, but decided to dedicate his life to helping families stay safe. He's the founder of the Safest Family on the Block, a platform where he interviews experts from various fields, paramedics, suicide counselors, defense investigators, and more to provide practical advice on family safety. He was raised Lutheran with a mother who is a minister. Jason has a relationship with God that encompasses more than just Christianity, and he's deeply serious about it. Politically, he describes himself as a left-leaning centrist who agrees with traditional Republican values, but is embarrassed by extremism on all sides, as am I. At least the extremism part of it, I fall on the other side of the aisle. I'm more right-leaning. As you know, if you listen to the podcast, his unique blend of experiences and perspectives wanted to make this an enlightening and thought-provoking conversation. And he's also the first person from the left side of the aisle to join us here on Patriarchy Principles. So, without further ado, welcome Jason. Jason, welcome to the show.
Awesome. The backyard music came over here so loud I was only able to catch every 4th word you said.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool
so
thing.
So if you leave the question, I don't know what it is.
Oh, no, I was just welcoming you to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm always glad to be involved in your projects.
I love it, man. I appreciate it greatly. That intro beat that you guys heard while I was talking there, which should balance out when it's actually, produced and comes in on the other side, is from the Podbeat app. That's the lo-fi beat. Podbeat allows you to make any podcast into a musical experience, like I just exampled there. Head over to the App Store or Google Play Store, download Podbeat for free, and check it out and enhance your podcasting experience to the next level, as well as audiobooks as well. So without any further ado, Jason, I'm so happy to have you. It was so nice catching up with you a little bit before we hit record. We've been around talking. You've been around the Young Dad podcast world for quite some time. Want to say probably about more than a year and a half ago, we did our first recording together.
Yeah, 1.5 years, 2 years, somewhere around there. Absolutely. I think we bumped into each other over on the Instas. And then you came on my show, I came on yours, and really love the work that you've done. And I've been sharing some of your advice that you came on to my podcast to give from your experience as a lifeguard. You know, that little hack that you mentioned about if you have a pool and you're throwing a party, there's some 17-year-old at the local pool who's working as a lifeguard who will come keep everybody safe for $50 plus all the pizza that's left over at the end of the party.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me a million years, but of course it's true. And if I had a pool, I would never, ever do it a different way ever again.
Yeah, I think that's like the most practical thing. I don't know how many parties I was invited to when I was lifeguarding at the pool. Word spread around that I was the one to ask, and I would bring another one of the guys with me. We would split the money, half and half, and then we just got to take all the food, have all the cake, all the ice cream, all the soda, all the pizza, all the food that we wanted to, and we literally got to sit there for a couple hours and make super easy money. So no 17-year-old will say no to that deal.
And it's especially important because, as we know, swimming pools cause more deaths every year than accidental firearm discharges in families with children. And one of the reasons for that is that parents think, heck, we've got it. And they do got it until they're 2.5 beers in. And then what you have very often is the tail end of that party where you've got kids who can't swim, kids who might not be safe in terms of diving and things at the pool, and nobody sober who's knows they're on duty. You go, ask any 17-year-old in the world who's qualified to do this if they'd like $50 and a bunch of food. There will be only one answer. And it's just one of the things from my podcast that I've really loved is almost everybody I've spoken to, there's been some blazingly obvious fact like that I had no idea about. But you can just make your kids safer with so easily. And that was among the many things, especially also your encyclopedic knowledge of how to do life jackets and kids was another piece that I really appreciated.
Yeah, no, I think life jackets are so important. If not a life jacket, get him a little puddle jumper, the ones that just
Yeah.
go across the chest and strap in the back. And do not put your kids in water wings. If you put your kids in water wings, I will go up to your kid and I will pop them and I will take your kid to you and say, go get them a puddle jumper. Their water wings are not U.S. Coast Guard approved. The puddle jumper is. It will keep them from tipping forward all the way. It'll keep them on their back if anything was to happen or they were to struggle. It's more fun for them too because they still put their face in the water, but only a little bit with a lot of effort and a lot of ab strength. Water wings will essentially tip them forward and it won't save their life or keep them safe. So they look fun. They're jokes. So don't do that. Or get them one of those life jackets, ones that have like the best ones are the ones that clip underneath, like through the groin area. Those are the best ones. Those keep your kid extra safe. And please make sure you click that little strap at the bottom underneath the groin area. That is what keeps them from bobbing and going forward, because life jackets, you can still fall forward and float. You can fall backwards and float. But that little strap keeps it so that they don't fall too far forward and they'll default to going backwards. Yeah.
So yeah, I really admire your passion and expertise in that subject.
Yeah, I am all about water safety. I think water safety is one of the most important things out there because it's such a big season. It was a really long water fun season this year. It felt like it went from mid-March to, well, now it's mid-October, and it's still hot as heck where I'm here in Washington, and so it's been a long, warm season this year, which is nice. So
yeah, absolutely.
But enough talk about the weather. Let's get into this. So again, cool. I'm so grateful that you joined me today, that I get to talk to you about this stuff, and someone from the different side of the aisle, because I actually started getting messages this week. Not a coincidence, but I got messages this week saying, hey, you talk to a lot of right-wing people. Why don't you ever talk to anyone on the left or on the other side of the aisle? And I'm like, well, just you wait, mofo. And then this person I messaged too, they're like, do you want to have someone else on? They do a podcast. I'm like, sure. I'd be more than down. What topics do you want to talk about? What are going to be our agreed upon ground rules? What are we going to use to fact check kind of thing? And are we going to be hostile? Are we going to have a conversation and a fun spirited debate? Are we going for a presidential debate, or are we going to go for a vice presidential debate? Which we've seen the two sides of that coin. One is very extreme. The other one was, I don't know. I'm not sure if you watched a vice presidential debate, but I thought it was very, 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 very civil. I think J.D. Vance won it in a landslide. I think Tim Walz agreed a bit too much. It seems like every time he said he agreed, he had a hard time directly answering questions. I really appreciated the moderators in the debate the most, I think, because they would try to get him to answer the question, get both candidates to answer the question and get an answer, and try to focus and keep it on track. Trying to remember what else from that debate I remember. But yeah, I thought it was a really good debate overall. Like it definitely
It really reminded me of political debates from my younger adulthood. The 90s and the 2000s before. I feel like the wheels started coming off of civility in politics in a big way sometime in the mid 2000s, and it got much worse when Obama got elected president, and much worse when Trump came onto the scene, and it's just been a mess. And that debate reminded me of the older debates where they were civil, where they either answered the question or clearly skirted the question in a political manner instead of just going for the throat of the other guy.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that civility, whether or not I agreed with either of them. I appreciated that was back to a conversation, not a shouting match.
Yeah, the civility was amazing. The civility was great. And I actually had a thought today too. So I keep seeing all these rumors that Trump's going to do Rogan, Kamala wants to do Rogan, and I had the thought today. I put it over on Twitter, or X, or as you want to call it. I like to call it Twix, over on Twix. And I was like, what if they both want to do it, why doesn't Rogan just host a debate between the two of them?
That could be fun.
You put Rogan and Patrick Bet-David as the moderators. Like, I think that would be probably one of the best presidential debates of all time. Like, if it was moderated by Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David. Rogan is very, very center. He's very center. He endorsed RFK Jr., which, he was center, running as an independent. So that, to me, that's a center. more or less, even though he's now since endorsed Trump and joined Trump in the campaign trail, which I think was a good fit regardless. Those two together make more sense than him being in Kamala's side. But, like, why it makes more sense for Rogan to host them both at the same time and get both perspectives, let them talk, and to host that kind of conversation like he does, like for 3 hours, just have everyone talk, sit down, chill.
Yeah.
He'll offer them
I
drugs.
don't know if Rogan.
kind of thing.
I love the idea, and I'd love to see Rogan and Walsh and Vance do that.
Yeah, I think those
Rogan
three should do
doesn't
it.
generally corral his guests enough to have any debate involving Trump and anybody.
See, that's why you would
Be
need
productive.
That's why you would need Bet David. That's why you would need
Yeah,
to have
you need
Bet
someone
David.
to come in hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it would certainly be fun. I'd like to listen to it. I like listening to Rogan. You know, Rogan to me, he's like America's cool uncle who smokes a lot of weed and can give good advice, but don't ask him about the moon landing. You know, we all have that one uncle.
Don't ask about the
And
moon
we're like,
landing. Don't ask him about aliens. Don't ask him
Yeah.
about. But no, I was listening to him today. So he came out with this episode. He was talking to some wolf expert. I don't remember her name. I can load it up right now. But she was her name's Diane K. Boyd.
Okay.
Episode 2213. And she's a wildlife biologist. She specializes in wolves. One of Rogan's favorite things is wolves. And just the whole time, the way he was talking, he's like, wow, wolves are so cool. Like, man, wolves. And I just loved it because he was just like a little kid. Like his whole like little kid self was like, whoa, you're teaching me about wolves, lady. Like you're the coolest. And the wood and animals. So just like that connection that he's able to have with like his podcast, topics he cares about, but that just brings out like childlike wonder is amazing. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate. He's clearly somebody who loves his life and just gets to do things that fascinate him, talk to people he finds interesting. And, you know, who could wish for a better life than that? And I do appreciate his childlike glee when he gets to talk to somebody about something meaty.
Yeah, and I love how he gets like these comedians who like we're used to laughing at, or these MMA fighters who we're used to just see bashing each other's skulls in. And he sits them down and he has a 2-hour conversation with them. And you're like, whoa, that dude's actually really smart. That dude has a lot of perspective. Israel Adesanya is one of the smartest MMA fighters I think out there. You know, he talks to all these dudes. Some of them are like very, very, very well spoken. Some of them are a little bit more like a little more street smart kind of thing, but they're all just very intelligent. They're all very up to speed with life and everything going on around them in the world and things like that. And it's really cool to see the different perspectives from like a comedian to an MMA fighter to a wolf expert to a scientist to Trump in the coming weeks, maybe Kamala in the coming weeks, who knows, to RFK and things like that. So it's just really cool to see all these things. So.
Yeah, I've always appreciated it. Trouble as a parent is finding 3 consecutive hours where I can listen to a podcast when it comes to Trump, or not Trump, but Rogan. Yeah.
True. Yeah, they're so long. They're so long. But sometimes you find those quiet hours sneak away, things like that. So, all right. Yeah. Well, now let's get started.
Excellent.
Now that we got there, so what's a hill that you're willing to die on when it comes to protecting your family and the principles you hold dear?
Ooh, okay. So stepping past the obvious ones about physical injury or threat of physical injury to my children, you're talking more like a philosophical ground, a moral ground. And this is one that I'm coming to now, that I've come to since I started Save His Family on the Block, which is we need to be on our kids' side. That feeling you and I certainly had when we screwed up at school. We got in a fight and got detention. And we're walking home from school just knowing that we're going to get it the second we walk in the door because our parents know, and we're going to get yelled at, we're going to get grounded, and it sucks. And you walk in the door and you're right. And you just get yelled at and you get grounded and all that nonsense. Where the folks that I've been learning from since I started this journey, talking about how communication and trust are what keep our kids safe more than anything else. And if we raise our kids that way, and I feel like most of us are raised that way, we're going to raise kids who don't trust us to come to with their problems. If instead we get the call about your son got in a fight today, he's got Saturday school and da-da-da-da-da, and he comes in and we give him a big hug, and the first thing we say, hey, I heard you got in a fight today. Are you all right? Tell me what happened. And then listen to it and say, well, it sounds like, you made some mistakes and you did some things right. And, you're not in more trouble here at home. You're in trouble at school. And as far as I can tell, you deserve that trouble at school. And I'm not going to make your bad day worse. I'm going to work with you to figure out how you can meet the consequences of this mistake with maturity and grace. And I'm on your side 100%. I'm never going to make your bad day worse. And I feel like I know I always feel bad talking about the places that I do things different from my parents, because my parents were great. But they were definitely of that old school generation where they felt that they needed to add additional consequences to the world kicking you in the butt. And because I come in the martial arts, I'm in the martial arts community, I'm in the self-improvement community, in the law enforcement community, I'm surrounded by a lot of people who still believe really hard in tough love, scare quotes included. And I'll die on that hill. It is a better way. And I'm seeing the difference between my older son and my youngest son, the older one who was 18 before I was introduced to this stuff, and my youngest one was about 7 or 8 when I was introduced to this stuff. And looking at at my experience with my oldest as a teenager and how my youngest, who's becoming a teenager, communicates to me about issues.
Yeah, sample A versus sample B. But no, I think that's really important. I think it's really important to be on the side of our children, on our spouses, and the people that we're really, really close with, that we know we will be on their side no matter what. Kind of like ride or die kind of stuff, right? Granted, I think you're 100% right too. Like, it doesn't excuse their action, right? It doesn't excuse the consequences. It doesn't make it right, but it doesn't also make it more wrong,
Yeah.
And there's a way to navigate the consequences here. Because I could definitely make it worse. I could lay into you, you could, do the same. You could do the same to them that they did to that other kid in a much gentler way, and make them feel some kind of pain, things like that they inflicted. Or, I almost think it's worse for kids to, not worse, but to be like heard and accepted is better. But it's almost worse, like, man, like, my dad's like cool as a cucumber. Like, what's gonna happen? I don't know what's gonna happen, because this is like a big deal. But I know he's gonna meet me here. He's gonna meet me where I'm at. And now we have to navigate this consequence. So this consequence still is gonna suck, because I'm still gonna be in trouble. There still is a consequence, right? At home, there still is something that happens, during the suspension or whatever. Granted, I have girls. One's in elementary school, so I haven't had any school fights, and my 7-year-old's a pushover. She's not going to get into a fight. She's too sweet. She stays away from the wrong people, so she doesn't mix herself up in all that stuff. My little one, who's 4, I worry about her. Let's just say that she will be the one that if her sister's getting bullied or anything like that when they're in elementary school together, the little one will handle it, and handle it good. So, that's fine. But no, it's interesting. I think it's important to meet our kids exactly where they're at, and to love them, and to make sure that we're on their side and we protect them. Of course, different things could have happened. Maybe they said something. Maybe they are fully in the wrong on something. Then that's a different conversation. So there's always those conversations that you have to have. And
you have that, and you can only have that nuance if they trust you with the truth.
Yeah.
Where if they trust that you're going to be on their side, and that if they come to you and they lost their temper and popped a kid in the head, they were in the wrong, right?
Yeah.
But if that kid was bullying LGBTQ kid at school, for example, and set aside politics, it's wrong to bully people, period.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if some kid was bullying somebody else at school and your kid stepped in, different situation. And then that conversation is about, okay, you know what, I'm proud of you for stepping up for that kid. One of the unfair things about life is sometimes the right thing to do is still punished by the authorities. Yeah. So how are we going to navigate that? I can't change that for you, and I wouldn't if I could, because that's another hard life lesson that you're going to need to learn. Sometimes you do the right thing and you still get kicked in the teeth.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not going to pick you up after Saturday school and come buy you ice cream. But I'm also not going to harangue you about this at home or make you feel worse than you already feel, because it looks like you feel bad enough as it is.
Yeah. And I think with that nuance is really important to have, right? It's important to have that nuance so you can get to the truth, so you can know what really happened. Because if they were standing up for someone, and this folks, and I don't think I shared the doc with you, but I actually wanted to get into LGBTQ plus stuff here next, actually. So it's a great segue here. But if they're standing up for someone and they're trying to protect someone, protect a friend, protect sister or brother or someone like that, then you have to have that nuance to say, okay, yes, what you did was wrong. Yes, you still have consequences because you shouldn't have handled it that way. But sometimes it comes down to like where you do have to handle it that way. You do have to stand up for wrong and things like that. And I had that happen to me plenty, where I had friends who were getting bullied, things like that, and I stood up for them, and I still got suspended. I still got the in-school suspension, things like that. But I didn't really get the extra trouble at home, because it's like, and that's what I've always like thought too. Like if my kids were to do that, it's really not going to be. It's going to be okay, pick you up, but yes, you did the thing. You're gonna have to do. You did the crime. You have to do the time, kind of thing with school. But we'll talk about it, and that's where we're gonna leave it. We're just gonna talk about it and talk about maybe how we could have handled it differently. What could we have done differently? What are the choices that we can make? Things like that. So I think it's important. But
exactly, and you can also just do the postmortem, the debriefing, right? Where
yeah, exactly.
you and I have talked before. I don't know if we mentioned it to your audience, but my background's in martial arts, bouncing, some bodyguard work, conflict de-escalation. So, when my oldest got into a tussle over a bullying situation, I was able to just break it down. Okay, at this stage, what did you do? At this stage, what did you do? Okay, buddy, that was rookie, and it was rookie. And you can meet them and find, again, in my family, in our family, the "you're in trouble" tone of voice is friendly razzing mostly. Well, come on, man, you screw that up, or whatever that is, and you can have that while still having your kids feel safe, that you're not going to overreact, that you're not going to add unnecessary emotional load, that you're not going to instill in disproportionate and extra punishments, so they can just come to the truth. And it's important when the kids are young that they'll come to you and tell you exactly what happened from their perspective in that fight, because later on, when it's a car, when it's questions about sex or sexting, like the thing we don't ever want to have happen is have our kid send or receive a nude photo and things get out of hand. And let's be clear, any of us who think that our teenager will graduate from high school without sending or receiving at least an underwear photo from a classmate is as naive as any of our parents who thought we were not getting up to anything in the backseat of the car.
True.
It's part of experimentation with love and sex that teenagers do and teenagers have always done.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing we want is for that to go wrong and them not feel like they can talk to us about it. And the way that we earn them coming to us immediately if that goes wrong is laying the groundwork with all these smaller, less important things every day up to there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's about starting that framework early, starting those conversations early, and instilling those values and instilling that, hope and pray that they don't, but you can hope and pray all you want, but if you're not taking the action behind it to ensure that it's less likely than not going to happen, if you want to flip it 80-20, that 80% chance that it's not going to happen versus a 20 that it could, that's when you have to lay that foundation, and you have to talk about it. Wise man built his house upon the rock, and we have to help our kids lay that foundation on the rock. The foolish man builds his house upon the sand. When you're not having those conversations, you're just hoping and praying that they never do, then that's when you're going to be 80-20 in the wrong way, and it's going to be the other way around. So
yeah, my mother's a Lutheran minister, and one of her go-to quotes is "Pray for wind, but row for shore."
Say that one more time.
Pray for wind, but row towards shore.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you can't. What my grandma always used to say as I was growing up is she would always say, "God helps them who help themselves." So you can hope and pray all you want, but there has to be an action behind it. Faith without works is dead, and that's a scripture from Luke. Matthew, I think. I'm so terrible at quoting scripture. I swear, I am the worst. Like, yes, I know the scriptures themselves. Like, I know like what it says, or I can read you. I can paraphrase the scripture for you. It's like, oh yeah, I can paraphrase this parable, that parable, this parable, that parable, what it means. But if you ask me the direct place where it's at in the Bible, I am the worst person at that. It is.
That's because you're busy being out there in the world and living the word, not sitting there memorizing the word so you can beat people over the head with quotes in a debate.
Yeah, and there's no point.
And I think Jesus would be groovy with that.
No, it's like I'd rather just know it, understand what it says, and be able to say, hey, well, let's draw a comparison to this situation to the woman at the well, or the the adulterous woman, or the leper, or the olive branch or, to the water and wine thing. Let's do that instead. We don't got to get into all the, the nitty gritty details. Yes, those are important, but we can Google search those later, so,
Yeah.
but I want to wrap back here. So one thing that you mentioned as we were kind of planning this conversation a little bit was you have no patience for folks trying to make gay or trans people's lives harder. And neither do I. I don't think it's okay. My older sister's gay. And, you say what you will. Wherever you fall on that issue is where you fall on that issue. Just don't bring my kids into it. Honestly, that's where I kind of draw the line. And I'll explain that here. But you and I both agree with traditional Republican values for the most part. And we're both embarrassed by the extremism, like MAGA or, there's extremism on both sides. If you say there's not, you're a fool. There's extremism on both sides. And so in today's polarized political climate, how do you navigate the complexities, especially like talking to your kids about gender and trans and LGBTQ plus? How do you, as a father, like navigate those complexities? And are you concerned about, the world that our children are growing up in?
So I'm concerned about the world that our children are growing up in, but I think that's what every parent has done in every generation. Becoming a parent makes you more conservative in the classic sense of being worried about change, being suspicious of new things that you don't know are safe. And this is an interesting, changing, vibrant, weird world full of weird people. And, it's been politically, people say it's unprecedentedly politically contentious. But the 60s, that part of the 60s was really like 1971, 1972. That was politically fractious. That was when those kids got shot in Ohio by the National Guard. That was when there were people spitting on soldiers as they were coming back from a war, which is something that hasn't happened this time around. That was pretty rough times too. And go back to during Prohibition, it was really ugly. And we have these cycles of I don't even think it's a cycle of ugliness versus peacefulness. I think it's a cycle of how visible the ugliness is. And so I'm not more worried about now than I think my parents were worried about me, but I try to be conscious of the risks and the troubles and the new hazards. Like the internet provides a lot of hazards that we didn't have when we were growing up. On the other hand, there's a number of changes in technology that mean we're much safer. I get the sense I'm about 20 years older than you, so you may have grown up with playground equipment that wasn't a death trap.
Well, you're not that old.
Yeah, like the 70s and 80s stuff, before that kind of prefab with the foam ground stuff made out of nice plastic and metal that doesn't have sharp edges started coming in. Old stuff.
What year were you born?
I'm 72.
Okay, so you're my dad's age. Okay.
I get that a lot. I got that recently from a really cute girl at the liquor store. I was buying some booze to go to the fairgrounds to watch a Blue Oyster Cult concert.
Well, she was at least at the liquor store. At least she's old enough to be saying that to you in any kind of way. So.
Yeah, well, somebody who's old enough to work in a liquor store who thinks I'm old enough to be their dad, I'm old. But anyway, there were a lot of dangers when I was growing up that don't exist anymore.
True.
And, for example, global thermonuclear war isn't really a threat anymore. I mean, it might be again in a couple of years if things keep going that way. But
I think we're definitely there already in terms of nuclear war.
Yeah. Well, not to get too doom and gloom, I don't think we're getting through the next 5 years without somebody dropping a nuke on something. But I don't think we're yet in danger of, the kind of nuclear holocaust that we were looking at during the height of the Cold War.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think we're more looking at where, let's say somewhere like China, just for instance, that's the only place I can think of right now. There's two wars I can think of where this could happen. Two scenarios. I could think of it with China and Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
I could think of it with Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
I can also think of it with, I guess, three, Iran and Israel. Both ways there.
Yeah.
I can think of it both ways there. Except for Iran has, I think they have enough for a nuke, Pretty sure China, Russia, and Iran all have enough to have nuclear grade weapons and things like that. They have their stockpiles and whatnot. I mean, as do we. So there's really only 4 countries, probably Australia too, if you throw them in there. So there's not many threats on that landscape that have the ability to nuke it, and I don't think it's like a world nuke. But I do think it's more like, okay, well, they threw a nuke, so I'm going to throw a nuke, and then we're going to throw a nuke, and so we're going to throw a nuke. So I think we're at danger of having like nukes kind of flying all over the place. Some of them are going to be worse than others. But I definitely think that could be on the horizon if we're not really careful. If we're not really, really careful. And I don't want to get doom and gloom either. I believe the future looks bright, and we're in for better times, and we can get past all these uncertain times that we're in right now.
I agree. And we kind of rabbit holed off. I think the original question was about how to navigate kids. How do we worry about them?
Yeah.
And how do we navigate some of those conversations?
Yeah, 100%. Because it's a really hard conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's only hard if you don't start having it young and early, instilling your values and what you believe to be true into your children, and also helping them understand like empathy kind of thing, like. And people may not agree with me on this, but my daughter's 7, my oldest daughter's 7, and we started having conversations about gender. But only to the point to where it's like, well, there's 2 genders, there's 2 biological genders. There's males and there's females. Males have penises, girls have vaginas. She doesn't like to say those words, but my 4-year-old has no problem saying vagina and penis, so she just thinks it's funny. But 4-year-old will. So that's kind of where we're at with that. And so that's kind of where we're kind of starting that, to kind of lay that like more that foundation, to like, okay, this is what we believe, this is what you've been taught, this is kind of what we're taught through, science and, with our religion being Christian, things like that. So kind of where I'm laying that foundation. But also, if it's none of your business, then mind your business kind of thing. Don't worry about it. If it doesn't affect.
And I have a couple of points where I differ on that, because as you've introduced me, I'm a left. I consider myself a left-leaning centrist for the most part. Although I listened to a couple of episodes of this show, and compared to your other guests, I'm a freaking hippie.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, but a couple of points on that. One of them is lead with compassion, lead with love.
Yes.
And make a decision about where you want to add complexity. For example, if you look, there's sex and gender are very complex conversations. A 4-year-old can't understand all of the nuances.
Yeah.
7-year-old can understand more.
Yeah.
Right? An 11-year-old can understand more. 14-year-old can understand more. Most of the time, they can usually understand and handle stuff about a year to 2 years before we think they can.
Yes, 100%. Which is why I started. That's why I started having the conversation, because it's like, okay, well, she's 7, she's in 2nd grade, she goes to public school. I live in Washington State. Even though I live in Eastern Washington, we're pretty red out here. There is an unbalanced amount of Trump and Vance signs to Kamala and Harris signs here. I don't know if people are, embarrassed by one side or the other, or more proud of one side or the other, but it's literally probably about a 95% split on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's one of the points of complexity that I think is important and this is what I'd maybe nudge some of the more conservative leaning folks on there about, do what you want to do in your bedroom. It's none of my business. Just don't tell my kids about it. Right?
Yes.
So the age that a child learns about heterosexual sex, heterosexual relationships, the age that's appropriate is the age that is appropriate for them to learn about sex between 2 gay people and gay marriages. Because we're just learning about sex. And so if your child reads a book with a mommy and a daddy who are married to each other, then they should be able to read a book about a mommy who are married to each other, and a daddy who are married to each other.
Yeah.
And if we prevent them from doing that, if we only show them the mommy and the daddy and the 2 kids and the picket fence and the 1.5 dogs, or whatever it is, some part of their brain, because they will be exposed to the idea that there are gay couples out there are gay families out there, LGBTQ, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I understand that when I just say LGP, KMNOP, whatever, the alphabet soup, I understand why it's there, I understand why it's important, but it frustrates the hell out of me. If only because it's hard to pronounce. Whatever those are, if they're only reading about heterosexual, heteronormative books, then they're going to start asking themselves, if only subconsciously, well, what's wrong with these other people that they're not in this?
And then that can be bias, discrimination, things like that happen then
Yeah.
after. No, I agree.
Yeah, and
I agree.
that's so whatever age is appropriate to talk to my kids about sex is appropriate to talk to them with a level of detail that is age appropriate, because you're not going to just like bring them on grinder.com, have somebody come over and demonstrate, right?
Yeah.
But if they know that some families have a mommy and daddy, or one mommy or one daddy, or a mommy and a grandma, or whatever your family constellation is, then it's
Mhm.
okay to talk about all those other constellations as well.
Yes.
Even if we're old enough that we still kind of get a little bit of a squick off of one of them.
Yeah. And
Because
knowledge is
we're all
power. Yeah, knowledge
yeah.
is power. Them our kids being able to understand, like, okay, yes, that's okay. Like for them, it doesn't really concern me.
Yeah.
So I don't need to do that because my thing is over here. But that's
Yeah.
them. I have no problems with them. Like they're
Yeah.
fine. Like I don't care about
Yeah.
that gay couple. I don't care about that lesbian couple. I don't care about that poly couple or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't care about
Especially
that
if they're
white
four.
mixed couple,
Their
things
thing
like that.
ain't anything,
Yeah, no, they don't understand anything, and all this stuff is taught, and it needs to be taught in time and appropriately and things like that. You said
Yeah.
1.5 dogs, and all I could think of is I hope that other half of that one dog wasn't eaten or anything like that. So,
Now, well, remember, I've spent a lot of time in countries where that is cuisine.
I know.
Um,
So I just wanted to make that joke, but my issue where it has to stop is don't preach your. I really want to say choices. Some of it, may not be a choice. To some it is. Um, that's neither here nor there to me. It
yeah.
was a choice or not. But where I take issue with it is if you're teaching my children with it, teaching it to our children. Where I take issue is when I see a pride flag hanging up in a elementary school library. What's the purpose? Like yes, I
Well,
think
I
it's
can
okay.
tell you exactly the purpose of that. And that is it's no different than an American flag or an Olympic flag or a state flag. Or, a flag is there to show pride and respect and compassion for people who what's the word I'm looking for? Who are part of a population. And more importantly, I think to me, and this is a narrative that I get right now from the right, and we used to have it from the left. And it's just that right now the left is having something of an ascendancy in certain spaces, so people are reacting to it. The narrative that teachers should be apolitical is, to me, fundamentally evil. A teacher should model being passionate and engaged about the things they care about. If a teacher believes that gay people should be treated like people, which is a question we're still kind of arguing about right now in our society.
Yeah, we're arguing
Then they
about
should,
that. We're arguing if Jews should be treated as people or
right?
as
And
criminal or
you should have that up in your classroom. And the teacher next door should have their Trump flag up. And the person next door should have the cross on the wall. And the teacher next door to
see,
that should
but
be wearing a
that's the
t-shirt from the
issue though.
Satanic Temple.
I agree, but that's the issue though, is that
Yeah.
we're okay with some, but not all.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're okay with one thing, and one thing's more than okay, and that's fully protected. But what about the veteran that wants to wear red every Friday to commemorate veterans?
Are
But
you
they can't do that.
are you aware of a public school in the United States that has a problem with that?
I am not aware of it, but if you look around, why is there only, to me, it's like, why can I clearly see this right here, but I don't see it in any other classroom? I don't see it. I don't see anything on the other side of any classroom. Yes, all classrooms have the flag. We still do the pledges in our schools here in our school district,
Yeah.
Which I think is great because you have to have that pride for your country and towards your country. I think that's fantastic. But you
Circle
don't
back to that, because that's a fight I love picking with people. But
Yeah.
let's get back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But no, for this one, it's like you don't see it. You don't see all the sides represented because one thing is okay versus the other things that are more than okay too. Like yes, it's okay to have that. Yes, it's okay to have that. But we only see, or at least I've only seen, and I go to all the schools here because of my job. I've been in almost every elementary school, majority of the high schools, and every single middle school in the area here. And it's a lot of freaking schools. There's a lot of freaking elementary schools here, man. And there's
It's shocking when you really get down to it how many there are.
no, like legit. Like we have 3, 4 school districts here, There's so many damn elementary schools. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And they're all so close to each other. It's like I
Yeah.
could do a route from my office and hit like 7, 8 elementary schools in like a big old loop to do like outreach to them. And it's crazy. It's just like, what the hell? But anyways, I digress here. It's like
Yeah.
we see it, we see some things, right? Like, yes, we
Mhm.
see baseball and we see, things like that. But I'll go with the baseball thing. Let's say that the teacher who,
Mhm.
let's think of the Texas Rangers, right? Because they're
Yeah.
from Texas. They don't have a Pride Night, right? And let's
Mhm.
say that there is a LGBTQ plus teacher who, feels that the Rangers flag and Rangers memorabilia is offensive, and then that Ranger stuff gets taken down. But that same teacher who may feel that the Pride flag is offensive says
Mhm.
the same thing. It's like, oh, well, that's going to stay up, but you have to take your stuff down. Like,
Yeah.
it's not an equal balance. Like, okay, it's like, well, you're allowed to express your views, but you're not allowed to express your fandom over a sports team that you've liked since the age of 2 because you lived in El Paso, Texas, or maybe not. What's that first city? Houston, not Houston, Dallas, Texas, and that's been like your team your entire life. And now you have to take down your sports stuff because someone complained and got overly sensitive about it, and now you're taking it down, but they get to leave theirs up, even though you're sensitive to that, but it doesn't matter, kind of thing.
And to that, I just respond that the solution to that problem, which is a problem, although I feel it's overblown by certain, because the media loves a crisis, right?
Oh, media loves a crisis.
But to the degree that's true, the solution is not to tell the person whose stuff is up to take it down. The solution is to vigorously advocate for the other people to be allowed to keep their stuff up.
Yeah.
And also, when you're talking about seeing one thing, only one side is represented versus the other. You've been to a lot of schools. How many crosses do you see on people's, teachers wearing a cross necklace or on
Very
a bumper
few.
sticker? I see them
Very
all over
few.
the place. I see them all over the place. Now I'm
I mean,
over
I
here
don't
in the
really look.
Pacific.
I don't really look at bumper stickers. I kind of just park and go in.
Yeah, yeah. But like
But I
many
see.
teachers still wear a cross around their neck. Most schools still have a baccalaureate for crying out, right? So that
I don't know what.
representation still.
I don't know what a baccalaureate is.
A baccalaureate is a Christian religious ceremony that is associated with graduation. Now, most of the time,
Okay.
yeah, and it's been a while since it was part of the official school, but there's almost always one held, and the announcements are gone through the school. And so the sides are represented in different ways. And one of the things that I think I see, and one of the reasons like a pride flag belongs up, is that the norm, for lack of a better word, the heterosexual, Christian, straight, nuclear family is the default representation,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't need the help. And I'm
Okay.
not one of those guys who's going to like say, "Hey, you're a cis white het dude, so you don't get to have an opinion." That's stupid. I'm a cis white het dude, and I'm spouting my opinions all day
Yeah,
long
let's
here,
see. We both. I'm about to say we both are, Jason. Come on now.
right? And that's what. But there's kind of a baseline default assumption of our society, and if it's not represented overtly as much as some of the deviations from the norm,
Yeah.
that's okay, I think, and maybe even necessary. But ideally, you would let the Christian have their cross up and the person from the Satanic Temple next door have their flag up in the same classrooms, and have those teachers express their opinions, share their opinions, talk about how they arrive at their opinions. And here's the
Mm-hmm.
tricky part: without making their students feel like they had to agree. I don't know why my shredder just did that, but without making their
Because
students feel like they had to
you
agree to the
mentioned something
academic
satanic in
process.
your home.
Yeah, I said the word Satan twice, and all of a sudden my devices are going off.
It's like saying Beetlejuice. But no. So okay. I see it here. I see what you're saying, and I agree. Representation is super important.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we don't have is we can have that representation. That would be awesome if we did. I think it'd be really cool to see diverse
Mhm.
perspectives and see them loud and proud and displayed. To where you go from one classroom of rainbows and butterflies to the one of black and red and blood spatter on the walls. I don't know anything about
Yeah.
Satanism or anything like that, paganism or whatever it is, the
Yeah.
variation. And then the next classroom is bright and white and looks like the inside of a temple. And then the next room is like a synagogue. And then the next room
Yeah.
is like a mosque and so on and so forth. That'd be so cool. But the thing
Yeah.
is that we can't have that in our country because we can have that. It's possible. But the thing is, we're not willing to have those conversations. And we're not willing to be okay with it. We're not willing to have
Yeah.
a conversation like this where it's like, okay, tell me your point. I'm listening. I hear you. Okay, my counterpoint. Okay, great. Hear you. Okay, great. Counterpoint. Here, like we can't.
Yeah.
Most people don't have a conversation like this. Most people that
No.
are on two different sides of the aisle, even though we have long-standing history, this is
Yeah.
something we never talked about until recently when I started launching these things. And we had that conversation, and I felt so awkward asking you the questions like, hey, where do you lean here? No problem answering it. It was fine. It was fine. It's like and now we're going back and forth here, and it's fine.
Yeah.
You're not heated.
Well, one
I'm
of the
not heated.
things,
We're questioning. We're trying to understand where the other person's coming from, and we just
one of the
can't
things
do
I
that.
hate about being a leftist, being on the left, is that I agree with a lot of left wingers, but they're such gaping assholes about it. I wish I didn't.
Yeah, and it's the
They're
same thing on the right.
condescending. They leap to make personal attacks when, for an opinion that varies just slightly, they're really, really mean to people who are like, they may have developed a certain viewpoint towards, for example, trans people. 2 years ago, they figured this out, and then they're just absolutely shitty to someone who's like 3 years behind them. And they're just such gaping assholes. I wish I didn't agree with them as much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I agree with that on the right too, with the extremism. There's
Yes, very
some
much.
hardcore MAGA people out there. There's some hardcore, and there's people who associate themselves with Trump that are also flying a white supremacy and driving a boat down a river kind of thing. Like I saw a video today. It's like those are not the majority.
No.
That's not the majority. People like me who are just kind of tired of the bullshit, tired of the extremism, tired of saying, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm playing identity politics, and now I'm playing gender politics. Now I'm saying all this stuff about you and race politics, things like that, because you offended me in some way, shape, or form. Where it's just like, I was just trying to order a coffee, but okay.
And it blows out of hand because they don't play by the rules. Like, the rules are, you find facts, you make decisions based on those facts, you address the issue, you attack the point, not the person.
Yes. And it's so easy to attack the person. That's kind of exactly where it goes. Where it's just like, this person, exactly what we see in the media right now, during this election cycle. We see, the left constantly saying, well, Trump when he was in office. Who's been in office 12 of the last 16 years?
Yeah.
You can't blame all the problems of the last, 16. I don't know, who was before Obama?
That would have been Bush the second for 2 terms.
And he was Republican, right? Or
yes, he was Republican. He was
okay.
the baby boy of Bush the first, who was vice president under Reagan.
And he was a 2-term, so he served from 2000 to 2008, correct? And
correct.
Then Obama from 8 to 16, Trump from 16 to 20, and then Biden from 20 to 24.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's been split half and half, essentially, then. So if you look at the last 24 years, it's been 12 and 12. But 12 of the last 16, most recent sample, since 12 of the last 16 was Obama, Trump, Biden.
Yeah.
And so, but when you're just constantly blaming, well, it's his fault. He's a threat to democracy. He's a threat to, he's Hitler. He's this, he's that, this, that, and the other. He's going to put in a federal abortion ban when, okay, when did he say that? And it kind of goes to that saying too. So, I mean, I don't know if he said that, then I missed it, or I wasn't as into politics as I am now. Then that's one thing. But it really goes to the saying that women like to say a lot is, if he wanted to, he would. Because he had the opportunity to do all these things. He had the chance to do them. Did he do them? No, because we have a system of checks and balances that don't allow for that. For all those extremism. But if he wanted to be Hitler, there's a way he could have probably been Hitler. Hitler wrote books, and there's ideology out there how to become a dictator, and you can look on ChatGPT and you can figure out how to be a dictator too. So I'm just saying, if you wanted to,
the Trump-Kamala debate is. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I don't think there's anybody out there who's undecided on that. And
no, I think at this
really
point,
weird. And the thing is, the facts are optional to people on both sides.
True.
We have not, as a society, figured out how to vet information. And so 90% of people on both sides are just going to choose the information that they agreed with already. this whole election is about that. Like there are very specific points of policy, and in this case, and this is the first time for me, character, that have me voting in one particular direction, and a lot of it is the how they handled the 2020 election. So I just said I wasn't gonna, and here I am doing it. Right. I'm just gonna table that. Just about, the results of the 2020 election are clear. Somebody running for U.S. president saying that it's not, insulting the people who worked at the polls and all of our soldiers who fought to defend our democracy for so long, who's maintaining a lie that that person has no business being president. And I would probably even vote for that if I agreed with most of his other policies. That's just my opinion. And it gets back down to, there are people who believe that it was faked, that it was stolen. And our society has not figured out how to train people to look at the data and analyze it deeply enough to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah. And so, and then, I don't agree with what happened on January 6th. I don't think people should ever storm the Capitol, whether they're doing it because of a presidential candidate or result of election, anything like that. I don't think you storm the Capitol. But I also think it's very interesting, and I've seen this in more than one place. I would have to look it up, find it, things like that. I normally start with tweets and then I do research then after. But that Trump wanted to call the National Guard on January 6th, but it was blocked by Pelosi.
Yeah.
So there's rumors and there's things like that. And of course, was Trump behind it? Could have been.
Yeah.
It could have also just been a big group of Trump supporters who all got together and said, we're going to go do this. Or we're going to go protest here. It's just like all of the Boeing employees getting together, even though they may not represent the majority. It's just a big group of Boeing employees who are all agreeing on the same point and going and striking against Boeing, when the other, 99 versus the one are just like, what? We don't want that. I don't want that. You want that. I don't want that kind of thing. I just want to do my job. I'm good. I'm happy kind of thing. So there's always the what ifs and things like that. And,
what I would love to see both sides do. Are you familiar with the term educational beatdown?
Educational beatdown. I've heard it, I believe.
Yeah. So for example, gang member goes and screws up in some way. Mm-hmm. And members of his gang beat the crap out of him. Okay. And that's how he learns not to screw up that way.
Oh, okay, got you. Okay, yes, I'm familiar with it.
And here's the thing, though, that if I'm on a gang called the Democrats, right? And a Democrat that I know goes and spreads misinformation on purpose, and I beat him up, obviously I don't go just assault him for that, but I serve him, I serve him a lashing, right?
You're talking about accountability.
I am. He learns, right? But here's the thing that I think is really important about it. If I do that to this fellow person on the left, what that person learns is, oh man, that was bad of me to do. I shouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. If you do that, what he learns is Republicans are assholes and mean to me.
Yeah.
If a guy shows up at a Trump rally waving a swastika flag, and I come put a boot in his face, my wife's Jewish. I will. I'm not a believer in political violence, but if you carry Nazi paraphernalia around my wife, whose grandmother was in Auschwitz, you are in peril. But if I do that, all he's going to learn is that liberals are assholes. But if you tell him he's not welcome and he has to go home and change his clothes, he might change his mind. And as a society, we have stopped delivering the educational beatdowns to the people on our team. We're just putting the boot in on the guys on the other side. And all the other side is learning is that the other side is mean.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And you have to have accountability within your own party. And a lot of people...
It's largely ineffective to try to deliver accountability to the other party.
Yeah.
Because it delivers the wrong message.
Well, yeah, it's also very similar in that aspect, too. It's like, if you're trying to hold your kids accountable for something that happened a week ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't really hold the same weight.
They don't remember a week ago. They don't remember this morning.
It's like, so why am I getting in trouble for this if it happened a week ago? Come on now, Dad. You have to do it in the moment. And it's especially profound in autistic children and children with ADHD and have complex behavioral and social emotional needs, that if you don't discipline them in the moment, it literally is like out of sight, out of mind, and they don't understand why they're getting the consequence for it, kind of thing. Which is why it's really important for all of us to not be stuck in like echo chambers and to have conversations like this and to be friends with people. And trust me, it is possible to be friends with people on the other side of the aisle and have a normal conversation like we're having right now, that you're listening
Yeah.
to at home. While you're sitting around cleaning, listening on the couch, whatever you're doing, kind of thing, wherever you're at. Thank you for listening, by the way. And so
Yeah.
it's important to have these conversations. But, character's one thing,
Mhm.
but, this is really the first time in history, even though it's Kamala and it's not Joe Biden, it's
Mhm.
the same policies, it's the same
Yeah.
things. Even though Kamala has come out recently and said that I don't think we could have done anything different.
Yeah.
Nothing comes to mind.
It's been weird and interesting watching Kamala try to balance, hey, I realize there were mistakes made and that I need to have my own platform, my own ideas, with also trying to be respectful of Joe Biden. And
And
she
Joe Biden,
hasn't stuck that landing very well.
she hasn't stuck any landing very well.
Yeah.
Honestly, she's had some really good moments. I will give her that. There have been some really good killer teleprompter moments where she delivered that teleprompter message with all her vigor and all of her ability and on her mic. There have been a lot of those moments. But the thing that bothers me is the accent switching. Literally going from Detroit to Pennsylvania. That bothers me. When talking to Latin Americans, that accent switching and just the accent switching, things like that bothers me. Really leaning so heavy into identity politics really bothers me, because it's like, where's your platform? I want to know your platform and your policies. Don't just try to appease to me because I'm a biracial man and I should vote for you because I'm biracial and I'm black, kind of thing. Don't, and same thing for the other side.
How many of her speeches have you listened to?
I've listened to a few, probably about
Have you been to
4.
her site to look at her policy descriptions?
I haven't dug deep into her policy descriptions.
Okay. Because I mean, with great respect, what you just described Kamala's appearance and vibe as is exactly what a lot of right-wing pundits say, but doesn't match the experience I've had watching her speak and looking at her policy statements and looking at her interviews. Now, I also don't like Kamala Harris. That's the thing. I just don't like it for the right reasons. And there's one thing that I will kind of congratulate her on. When she was running for vice president, she had a certain vibe. She spoke in a certain cadence and a certain tone that is the exact cadence and tone that I use when I'm intentionally being condescending and trying to hurt somebody's feelings, right? And it really rubbed me the wrong way. And she has improved with that over the last 4 years. I think she's getting coaching. But
100%. They had to coach her up to get to kind of where she's at now.
I think everybody. But it was interesting to see that coaching.
Yeah. No, I think there has been growth, but I mean, I feel like it's going to be more of the same that we've dealt with the last 4 years. And going back to kind of my initial statement there is, this is the first time in history that we can compare apples to apples. We can compare 4 years to 4 years. Where we saw, okay, when she's been in office the last 3.5 years as vice president, so yes, she has less power and pull and say, but she's a vice president versus Trump, who was in office for 4 years. And we can compare, what happened under one administration, what happened under this administration. Because
and I'd argue that we shouldn't compare 4 years to 4 years. We should compare 3 years to 3 years, because it's unfair to hold 2020 against Trump. The pandemic borked everything, and that wasn't Trump's fault. It's unfair to hold his 2020 numbers, and it's unfair to hold 2021 numbers against Biden, because Biden was served this gigantic platter of shit that was the economy after Trump. So you want to compare. So I would say we should compare the first 3 years of Trump's versus the last 3 years of Biden.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I mean, they both had a year of COVID. They both had a year of pandemic that they were trying to deal with and navigate and things like that. So, but it's the first time that we can ever do that. We never had this opportunity.
It was easy. I mean, you can do that. You can go do that going back into the 50s. If you have the time and you're a huge nerd like I am and find that shit interesting, But now it's easy because you can just Google it. You can find the numbers.
Yeah. Heck, they're posted on X multiple times a day, the numbers.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference and things like that. But the biggest thing that I probably take issue with is that it's always a political thing. There's always empty promises. There's always
Yeah.
empty promises. And one thing that I appreciate that Vance has done and Trump has done is mostly Vance. Honestly, it's been mostly Vance. And I think Trump really missed his opportunity to do it in their one and only debate until the very end when he did do it, was from Kamala saying, well, day one when I'm in office, day one when I'm in office, day one when I'm in office. Like, you've been in the office. You've been in this office kind of thing.
But she hasn't been in the office. I mean, you took high school civics, right?
Yeah.
You know that the vice president can't make an oh God, what's the word for when the president signs something into law?
An executive order.
She can't make an executive order. The only power the vice president has is to break a tie in the House. So that I don't really buy into that narrative. Now the question for me is, what would she do differently than Biden? And there's a lot that I don't think a whole lot.
Yeah. And there's also her ability too, though, like as the vice president, to where she can push for the things that she's promising on day one in office. Why hasn't she pushed for those previously? Why hasn't she talked to Congress, talked to the Senate, been in front of those meetings, and been in front of all those congressional leaders and lawmakers and things like that? And I mean, maybe we just don't know. There's a little freaking gnat and it's bugging the shit out of me. I'm so sorry if you're on YouTube or Rumble or wherever you get your video podcast from, Spotify, wherever, or everywhere. Anyways, it's like, where's that emphasis and where's that vigor? And we can say the same thing for Trump too. It's like, well, he was in office for the 4 years. Why didn't he do some of this stuff? Why didn't he, make IVF legal? Or shoot, that's the wrong. It's always been legal. Why didn't he make IVF mandatory to be paid for by the insurance company or by the government?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yes, it's on both sides, but it really comes down to on both sides. Like, if they wanted to, they would. If they wanted to, they would. And
for me, that's a reasonable thing to lay on Biden, but it's not a reasonable thing to lay on a vice president. For example, I'm going to date myself and age myself really huge, but the Doonesbury comic had the joke for 4 years that the first George Bush's vice president, Dan Quayle, his character in the comic was invisible because the vice president is largely invisible and largely, they go talk to foreign leaders. They break ties. They give the occasional speech. They don't even have they're not even the opening act for the State of the Union.
Yeah.
And so hey, why haven't you done this thing that's not in your purview? Seems silly to me. But again, I want to know what she will do differently. And when she says day one, I'm going to do this, well, it doesn't sound a whole lot different than the thing I disagree with Biden about. So come on, lady. On day one, I'm going to do this.
And that's another one. That's another thing too. It's like, it doesn't sound a lot different. The voice is different. The person saying it's different, but it's the same thing. But I feel like that would have been anybody else that they would have put in this spot after they threw her out. After they threw her in there and removed Biden. You can say it's a coup. I don't think Biden really wanted to be out of it. He had just held a debate. Yes, he got trashed in that debate and he got drugged. He did not perform well. He did not perform well.
It was bad.
But Trump's you have to give that man credit. He has been successful in business. He has been successful in politics. He has had his drama. He has had his shortcomings, 100%. But he has been successful in business. He has been successful with more or less, yes, multiple marriages and things like that. But, how many of you guys have also had multiple marriages as well? Listening. Yeah, same. He's
blowing our average.
Yeah, oh, exactly. No, but his kids love him. His grandkids speak highly of him. His now wife speaks well of him and things like that. So it's like he's won in life. He's won in business. He's won in family, and he's won in politics. That's a trifecta right there. That's a triple crown kind of thing. And so he's very acute. He's very smart. I mean, man's a freaking comedian on the side. He does all these comedy podcasts, and he gets these big time comedians just laughing hardcore. Those are some really fun podcast interviews where he's doing like Theo Vaughn.
And I think that's a symptom also of what we talked about a lot here, where it would be very difficult for me to take 100 of my liberal friends and say, hey, say one nice thing about Donald Trump. without being a smartass. And a lot of them couldn't do it.
No.
And I think the same thing's true, that I could go to 100 people on the
If
right,
I
say
go to
one
100 of my
nice thing
friends,
about Kamala Harris. One nice thing, you know.
I can put
And
it up on
we-
X right now and say one nice thing about Kamala Harris.
Yeah, you know. And then that gets to information diet, right? Where people on both sides, if they see something that disagrees with them, they're not going to listen to it at all, but they hear the most ridiculous thing that's kind of on their side, and they're just sucking that down like my ex at a frat party, you know? And
damn, Jason. Okay. Okay.
now this is a generic ex. I have nothing but nice things to say about my actual ex-wife, but you got to make my ex and your mama jokes from time to time.
You have to. You got to keep it lighthearted, and that's what Trump's really good at too. Like, he's really good at keeping it light. He's really good at keeping it funny. You know, he comes up with names. He's off the cuff so much, which is like, so much of a tampon him and Comadre Kamala. And he comes up with these nicknames and he just names people and he just throws shit out there. He just says whatever's on his mind. I mean, that's it. Say shit that's on your mind. Like, that's great.
I think it is. I think that he is more careless with how he riffs than a person at his level of responsibility and influence should be.
Yes.
And we talked about gender sex earlier, and I think that was what happened there. I don't think he had some kind of mustache twirling evil genius plan. He just took his eye off a ball he should have had his eye on.
Yeah. And you can say that for any president. There's every president that had those times where he took his eyes off something that he should have kept his eyes on.
Yeah.
And he missed the mark on some things. Every president does. But I think here's you can't place all the blame on one person. You can't blame all the problems of the last 16 years on 4 years. When the other 12 years were ran by Obama and Biden. Literally were ran by Obama and Biden. Mm-hmm. With Obama and Biden in office as president and VP, and Biden, Harris in the office now. There's the common denominator there. And it's not Obama. So, so it's just something interesting there. But I don't even remember what the point I was going to make there. But
we've been riffing, and that's good. I'll steer us back because I love picking this fight, and my email address is brick.jason@gmail.com for anybody who's listening who wants to fight with me about it. We talked about the Pledge of Allegiance earlier.
Okay, yes, and let me hit on this here, and then let me hit on my point here for this because I want to add some more to it.
Yes,
I think, and I truly believe, every single business in America that was started in America by Americans that are citizens of the United States should have an American flag somewhere represented in their business.
I think that at a moral level, at a personal level, I'm certainly not going to fault anybody for that. But forcing a business to do that is exactly the opposite of what America stands for, to me. That America stands for putting that flag up if you want. And that's actually dovetails perfectly into my viewpoint about the Pledge of Allegiance. That the Pledge of Allegiance, they're good words, but mandating that children stand up and recite in unison a pledge of fealty to authority, using words they memorize without understanding, that's some Stalinist China Mao shit. That's not America to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go die on that hill. It's a small thing. It's an academic point. If my kid said he didn't want to, I didn't in school, I stood there respectfully with my mouth closed. Because even when I was in middle school, I felt that didn't represent what I love about America. Mm-hmm. And so, especially when they're too young to understand the words. It's but that's just me. And again, it's not a hill I'll die on, but it's just something to maybe think about.
Yeah, I think it's important that our kids understand what they're saying and what it means, what these big words mean. I think it's great. But I mean, when we go to a sporting event, we also stand for the national anthem. We do.
But we stand quietly and listen to it, and it's a nice little celebration, but we don't have the kids memorize it. And also, if you don't want to go to a sporting event, there's not laws that make you go to a sporting event, where kids are required by law to go to school.
Gosh, I wish there was laws to make us go to sporting events. That would be so cool.
It would be fun. It would be fun. Or laws that meant I could get the day off to go to a sporting event.
Right. Man, that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
If I ever run for president, I'm putting that as one of my things on my campaign platform.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday is going to be the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday is going to be a national holiday. We're going to call it Hangover Day, and nobody has to go to work.
Absolutely. That Game 7 of the World Series, Game 7
Yeah.
of the Stanley Cup. Let's
Speaking of
see.
sports, you gonna watch the upcoming Tyson fight?
I didn't know who was he fighting?
Always, for some reason, I can't think of his name whenever I'm called on it.
I thought he
Oh, it's
wasn't
Paul.
fighting. I thought that fight was off because of Tyson and his stomach issues.
So it's still, apparently it's on-ish as of now, because it's still up for Netflix. It might be coming around, but yeah, I'm really interested in that fight.
I thought that
Because I am
wasn't
like
happening.
Mike Tyson ancient, so I want to see how he does.
No, I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be a good fight. Paul is no shove though. Paul is no shove.
I honestly feel like it's going to be a short fight, but I don't know which way it's going to go. I think that either Tyson's going to show up overconfident and get really surprised and rattled.
I think that's where.
Yeah, or Paul's going to come in and realize very suddenly that he has never been in the ring with something like Iron Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think it's going to be a quick fight, though. I don't see it being a quick fight.
You think it'll go a little longer?
It has to. It has to. For the views, for the money, for the purse. It's going to go longer. It's just like all those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch Mayweather McGregor back in the day? This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was a clinic. What I loved was the day after Mayweather McGregor, The Onion put out its headline was "World shocked when amateur boxer loses boxing fight to professional boxer."
Right, but Paul's not an amateur at this point.
Paul's good shit.
He's legit.
And he's younger, and he's younger, and he's got the training technology has improved immeasurably since Tyson was in his prime. UFC.
That begs the question. Is Tyson going to stick to his traditional method, or is he going to up his game to meet the new age young buck, or does Paul have that advantage to where he can be like, okay, well, I've seen every single thing you've ever done. Yeah. You've seen everything I do, but I can study it at a higher, deeper level, intellectually and technically, because of how I train, kind of thing. I think that's what makes him unique, is that he has that ability to understand like the nuances through technology, and like some of these young hitters that are coming up in like baseball, and make them better. Don't ask me about the young quarterbacks in the NFL, because they all like stink outside of like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. But you think they would have enough technology to be able to understand, like, okay, well, this is my game, this is what I got going up against, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in the fight, and I don't know which way it's going to go. But I think one of the athletes is going to be surprised early on, and then we'll see if they can recover.
Yeah, I think they can both adjust. Tyson's been around long enough where it happens to him, he'll adjust, and he'll get through the first round, and he'll make some adjustments. I think Paul has the camp to help him make those adjustments. And with how much time they've had to prepare for this fight, there should be none of those surprises, honestly. Yeah. If you think about it.
I hope I'm wrong, because the wronger I am, the more fight I get to watch.
Yeah, so I would. I'm gonna watch that fight when it happens. But, we'll see if it happens. I hope Tyson's okay with his stomach issues and that he's healthy enough to have the fight, and it doesn't cause him, long-term detriment or early immortality for any way, shape, or form. And he cares about his health most. And same for Paul.
He's a pro fighter. He's gonna have long-term health problems. I mean, you saw what happened to him by the end.
Well, what's already happening to him, with the stomach ulcers and everything like that, because he has to train, he has such a strict diet, and fucking up his stomach, and so that's important too. So,
I mean, I was never, I was a fighter in my 20s. I was never really good. Got up to kind of the state regional level.
Bro, you are a 6th-degree black belt. Shut your mouth.
Yeah, but like my full contact career was brief.
Okay.
But just my memory issues and how much my hands hurt every day. I got a kid who kind of wants to do that, and I'm trying to talk him out of it, because it's not good for you, man. It's not good for you.
No, I've had 5 concussions between swimming and life and basketball and baseball, and it's no joke. Like, my memory issues suck, and I'm barely 30. So it's rough. It is rough. So head injuries are no joke. But I mean, everyone has their passion. Everyone has the things they're passionate about. There's a way to still do the things that you love, and maybe not, go for it where you're going to be someone that's going to hold a professional record, things like that. And you just train, you get really good at it, and it's just a really good thing that you do for yourself. There's that option too. There's always options, and it's important to talk about our kids through those options and to work with them on it, and to ensure that they know all sides of the coin. Just like it's important for them to know different sides of the spectrum when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights, when it comes to politics, when it comes to different issues, where each side lies.
And try to create an open framework where if they're, and we'll use like sports as the analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was cross country wrestling and track, 3-season athlete, 4 years of school, cross country wrestling track. If my kid wanted to do football, swimming, and baseball, I have to create a home where he can feel like he can be passionate about that without letting down the old man.
Yeah.
And I think especially men who are jocks, there's that little temptation to, well, I only took third in state, so my boy's got some talent. He's going to take state instead of me, where I couldn't. And try to
that bar is set so ridiculously high.
And push them into this track where they'd rather, join the chess team or something.
Right. Where they lose that passion for the sport when maybe they could have been really good if you would have just been supportive and not set the bar too crazy high. You gave them some autonomy and some wiggle room here.
And what I'll also suggest on that point is volunteer to assistant coach some sport you don't know if your kid's into it. Because not only are you supporting them, they get to watch you learn and be bad at something. And it's hard for dads to be bad at shit in front of our kids. It's really hard for us, but it's such an important lesson for our kids to learn.
Yeah. No, that's important. It's important for our kids to see us fail. It's important for them to see us apologize, to see us be sorry, to see us take accountability, to see us make mistakes, and to see us struggle from time to time. Like those are all okay things. Like there's nothing wrong with any of those. Those are all perfectly normal day-to-day things. It happens to us, and it's okay for us, our kids, to see those vulnerabilities. And
failing isn't falling down. Failing is not getting back up.
Exactly. And if they can see us fail and get back up, then that gives them more confidence that they can fail and get back up. They can see dad do it, they can do it. Builds that confidence in them, things like that. So I wanted to just touch on Safest Family on the Block, which is a great resource for families to, again, kind of the common things of this conversation is to arm themselves up with knowledge and insights and things that they may not know, like about water safety and about life jackets and water wings and shit like that, and just how to protect your family. So it's a really incredible, invaluable resource for parents. I have a digital copy. I look through it from time to time. I think it's great because you still haven't sent me a physical copy. Just saying.
There's one on the way, actually. It just got picked up. The first version was self-published, and it got picked up by YMAA Publishing. And so they made me take the original down off of Amazon, and it's re-releasing this spring. And they've talked to me about doing a series. So, first one, Safest Family on the Block, which is 101 tips and tricks from just across the whole spectrum of safety. As you read the book, you wrote a wonderful review for it on Amazon about just little bits and hacks like that. And then the next one will be probably Safest Family on the Road, and it'll focus on driving safety and road safety. And then Safest Family on the Web and Safest Family at School. And they're going to do a series based on that where we drill a little deeper on those next ones. And maybe we're going to have a YA book out of it too, which is like just the same kind of advice, only for kids. Like instead of telling a parent how to make sure your kid drives safe, some real deal talk to a teenager. Okay, buddy, here's how you're going to get home safe every night. And so, but so they picked it up and the book's coming out, and then you've been on the podcast as well.
Yes. And I think it's just a great resource overall. And I think those things are important because not every parent has those conversations with their kids. So some kids don't get to have those conversations because maybe they don't have the parent there to have them with. Maybe they don't have the dad. There's a lot of single parent households. There's a lot of single mother households. There's some single father households too. Again, it's an uneven ratio. Thank you to the nanny state, which we didn't even touch on the nanny state. I have thoughts about the nanny state. I think that's something that we could probably get to some pretty close agreement on. Honestly, I think the nanny state needs to go, but I mean, it's hard to say that that's easy to say in thought and to say it.
Yeah.
When in reality, how do you get rid of something that so many people rely on without, jeopardizing their livelihood and things like that? So it's a whole process that's going to take a long, long, long time, and a lot of politicians aligning over a generation to abolish that and to come out on the other side of that to where we're stronger and better for getting rid of it versus just plucking it and changing it. So it would take a state to state effort too, kind of like we're seeing with over the last 4 years that we've seen with, Roe v. Wade being overturned, how the states are voting on that, how that's been back to the states and how it's affecting different states, different people in different demographics in different ways. But I personally think a lot of these issues are best left to the states. I don't think it should be a federal thing where everyone across the country has to do one thing. I think you should have a right to say, what your thoughts are and what you want in your state are really important. Same for like marijuana and drugs and things like that. I don't think a state should just be able to say, like, look what happened in Oregon. But they said, oh, all this shit's legal. Hold on, we need to repeal that. We're repealing that. That was a bad idea. But sometimes you have to have bad ideas.
I'm actually here in Oregon, and that didn't work. Now, it's an interesting case because one thing that I say about a lot of programs, a lot of things on both sides is
you were in Oregon.
Poor execution is not proof against concept.
True. Very true.
Right? So the Oregon law was modeled on Portugal, which has had outstanding success by decriminalizing everything. And the way it worked there was, and this is how the Oregon law was written, was that, you get pulled over with a personal amount of cocaine, right? You're not going to jail. They're not even taking your drugs. But you do have to go sit with a judge and a drug counselor and see if you have a problem or if you're doing it recreational and maintaining. And it's not impacting your career, and it's not impacting you. And that's what the law in Oregon was going to be. But the second half of the Portugal law was that the money that wasn't being spent on law enforcement and incarceration for those drug offenses was being spent on addiction recovery systems and infrastructure. And Oregon didn't do that last part. And so what we ended up with was a huge fucking mess. And I'm pissed off about it because I am not somebody who has a moral attachment to drugs. I have logistical attachment to drugs. My oldest son does more weed than I want him to do. But it's Oregon and he's an adult and it's legal. And he doesn't smoke more weed than I drink beer. So who am I really?
Yeah.
If he used cocaine, for example, on a fairly regular basis, but it wasn't impacting his health and his finances were under control and he was going to work on time and he was being, he wasn't breaking other laws because he was high.
As long as he doesn't do it in the White House. As long as he doesn't do it in the White House. No cocaine in the White House. Come on now.
Yes.
We've learned.
We've all been doing cocaine. They've been doing cocaine the whole time. Maybe not Reagan, but no.
Tell me that Biden doesn't have a drug cocktail made up for him 3 times a day just to keep him alive and breathing until after this election's over, and then they're going to pull the plug and he's going to die in a day. That was one of my biggest fears. That was one of my biggest fears when they announced Kamala.
I wish fewer people would celebrate when that happens. But my point was, that the only argument I'd have against my son using cocaine is that he's in legal jeopardy when he uses cocaine in a way that he's not if he uses marijuana. And so, there was a moralistic push against drug use that failed in the 80s and 90s because it's not a moral issue. It's a logistical issue. It's a risk versus reward issue. And unfortunately, some of the risks are really bad. If you get addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, addicted to pornography, addicted to sex, things go really bad for you really fast. And often people make those decisions when they're way too young to weigh those.
Yeah. I'm trying to look this up real quick. And okay, so one thing I actually do have a moral attachment to marijuana for my case. Just because my second youngest brother here, who lives in California, he started using marijuana when he was in the single digits still, 9, 10 years old. And so it has triggered psychosis and schizophrenia for him, which is a link with it. When you use it too young, there's researches about this from the NIH, Medical News Today. There's other studies, Harvard Health, Child Mind Institute. There's some direct links between cannabis and psychosis in kids, especially when they start using it too young. And so, again, it comes back to my issue to where, yes, keep it with adults, leave the kids out of it. The kids should not be affected by it. The kids should not be affected by these political issues. Kids shouldn't be affected. They should know what they are and whatnot, but at an age-appropriate level. They don't need to know the nuances and the details and the adult details of it.
Well, I guess that's my question about that narrative, which does make sense, which is how do you prepare your children to make intelligent, responsible adult decisions around these topics without exposing them to these topics.
Well, you have to. You have to expose them.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
expose them. You have to expose them. There's no choice but to exposing them to the topic. And but that's okay, because if you expose it to them early and you have an ongoing conversation as they approach adulthood and as they get older, they can make better, more informed choices.
Yeah.
Is it going to stop them from doing it? Probably not. But it's going to help them, think, have a couple thoughts about it, and then be able to come home and say, "Hey, Dad, I just got high as fuck. I am not okay." And it's like, "Oh, well, thanks for telling me that. Let's go get you let's go lay you down and get you some protein, and have you
Do you
eat
need me to
something."
babysit you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and that gets back to what we talked about at the beginning about having them trust you enough to come home and share that disaster with you, and to come home and say, "Dude, I have," or that call that we all make, that you haven't gotten there yet, but you'll get there, and hopefully you have that with your parents, where when your girl's 17 and went to a party, she can call you at 11:30 and say, "Daddy, I need to go home, but I am way too drunk to drive home. Can you come get me?" We want them to know that they can do that rather than try to drive home and sneak in the house.
Yeah, and it's just about teaching them right from wrong, and teaching them where your values are, and instilling those values, and making sure you start early. That these things, there's certain things that are between husband and wife. There's certain things that are adult conversations. There's certain things that different circles have different conversations. But where you're at, you need to worry about this right now, and this is where you're at. My 7-year-old brought up college today, and she's like, "Well, I want to go to college so I can get my master's degree." I had been chasing my master's degree and got my master's degree in developmental psychology, and so it's like that's where she gets that from, because she's seen me do homework, she's seen me do classes and talk about school time and time again.
Fabulous.
And so it's like she's talking about it at 7. I'm like, hold on, like you're 7. Let's get through second grade.
Yeah.
Let's get through this. Let's get through this first. She's like, well, I'm gonna go to college. I'm like, okay, but there's other options. She's like, huh? What other options? Like, I want to go to college. Like, that's an option. Well, you don't have to go to college. You could go to the military. She goes, oh no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you can be an electrician. There's all kinds of things.
We talked. I let her know about trades. I'm like, you can go and do a trade. She goes, I think I want to go to college and become a lawyer. I'm like, well, that's going to take about 12 years. She goes, I don't want to do that. So, but we were able to have that conversation, kind of fun, and go back and forth here. So it's just about having those conversations and being open to those conversations, and being able to, help them become, productive, respectful, empathetic, and good members of society, and just making sure that they're safe. And that's our job, is to keep them safe and to keep your family safe, especially as dads. It's important to know both sides of the aisle and have conversations. If you are on the same side of the aisle as me, then it's important to find those around you that maybe not be, that you can have a reasonable conversation with, and vice versa. That you can have, oh, well, this is my thought. This is my thought. This is your thought. Oh, cool. I'm a little bit more informed now. Does it really change anything for either of us? Like, I'm not gonna convince you not to go vote for Kamala. I'm not gonna try, because you have your mind made up. It's October 15th. Very little is gonna change the decided voter.
And I'm sure that's true for you too. Something huge would have to break. And what I love doing in personal conversations, you sit down with someone you disagree with over a beer, and you figure out something you disagree on, and you just keep scaling it down and down and down and down until you figure out the value that you disagree on, or the fact that each of you has a different set of facts, and then you can go Google it and figure it out. I find those kind of that's beers after work, weed in the dorm room kind of conversations for the most part. But I wish we could do that more as a country, where it felt like even during the Obama administration, everybody wanted what was best for the country and disagreed on how best to make it happen. And somewhere in the second half of the Obama administration, people started wanting the other side to suffer more than they wanted the country to succeed. And I wish that wasn't so. And it's our job as parents to model a better way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's really important. And, there's no point in disparaging the other side. There's no point in playing the identity politics game. There's no point in, fighting and getting into confrontation when you can just have a conversation. Just have a conversation. That's all. Have a conversation, have an informed conversation, Have sit
Maybe
down,
set some
have
ground
a
rules
disagreement.
early about if we boil down to this is true, this ain't true, how are we going to find out whether or not it's true? Because
Yeah.
one thing that bothers me in this, you have your right to your opinion, right? Everybody has the right to their opinion.
Hmm.
But your opinion is, I like red wine versus I don't like red wine. And an opinion isn't, this glass is full of olive oil. That glass is full of olive oil or wine or beer or whatever. And
Yeah.
you can have your opinion on whether or not you like it, but there's an objective reality as to what's in the glass. And I see so
Hmm.
many people, again, on both sides, when presented with evidence that they are wrong, responding with, I have the right to my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Or
something
it's
we need to call
or it's the same.
ourselves out on.
I agree, and it's also the same when it comes to race and to gender. We like to pull these cards out when it's convenient for us. Oh well, you're just saying that because I'm a Republican, or you're just saying that because or you're just saying that because I'm black. You're just saying that because I'm white, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you're just treating me that way because I'm this or that and the other, kind of thing. Where it always comes down. It doesn't always have to come down to identity. You can just be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. Like I'm okay being wrong. I was probably wrong about some things in our conversation today. And that's okay. You probably felt I was wrong. I felt you were wrong about some things, and that's okay because we still talked it through.
You just talk
We're talk it out. That's all you got to do.
and try
And we
not
leave.
to reduce the other person to a caricature. Try to understand them as a human being.
Yeah, and that's what both of our presidential candidates aren't able to do. Our vice presidential candidates are. Our vice presidential candidates are. Even though, and it's just a funny quote. When Walz said, I'm friends with sex offenders. Was it sex offenders? Wasn't that what he said? Was it sex offenders during the debate?
Let me look it up. I can't imagine it being sex offender because that's just political suicide on both sides.
I'm pretty sure it was sex offender. But he said something really stupid. He's like, "Well, I'm friends with this group of people." It's like, what? Or was it murder or someone?
Oh, I become friends with school shooters is what he said.
Oh yeah, that one.
He clearly meant I'm friends with people who were victims of school shootings or who were in a school shooting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
that kind of
I know the context. It's just the fumble over the words. Like that's a big fumble. That's a big fumble.
Yeah. Well, that was something folks knew about Waltz going in, right? Like Waltz is a teacher and a coach. Waltz is exquisite at one-way talking because he's a teacher and a coach.
I feel like he was an assistant coach. I feel like he was an assistant.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to play that game. He's a coach. My favorite wrestling coach was the assistant coach. Doesn't change the job. Doesn't change the important parts of the job. But the point being that as a teacher and a coach, he's great at one-way speaking. He's great at giving speeches. He probably hasn't been in a debate, a real debate, but 5-6 times in his life. And that showed in the debate that he was not as good at that extemporaneous communication as somebody with a different set of professional experiences had.
Yeah. And I also saw a rumor too. I've been trying to look and find anything from it. I don't know if it's true. But there was a thing on Twitter. It got like a bunch of hits, like a ton of hits.
Yeah.
I think I retweeted it, but something about how Tim Walz had relations with a minor. That's why he was removed from his teaching position. Things like that.
That sounds absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, like I said, I cannot find anything if it was true or not. I've searched from it.
Unverified allegations of inappropriate students shows up on the Hindustan Times Now, Reddit.
Yeah, I'm looking at the same. Yeah, Reddit. I see Times Now.
So you scroll through and you don't find anything real. It ain't real. There's a book there's a really good book called Calling Bullshit. It's literally called that. It is a very good 101 thing about how to look at information and vet and make decisions and try to figure stuff out. Like, the gold standard of information is when, for example, a conservative website says something nice about a liberal or vice versa. Because, if MSNBC comes out and says something nice about Trump, you can take that to the bank. Right?
MSNBC is, yeah.
Right? If Fox News came out and said something nice about Harris, you're pretty sure that's true. When it's the Hindustani Times and Newsmax is saying that Waltz had an inappropriate relationship with a kid, probably a grain of salsa the way to go on that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it was such a random tweet, kind of came out of nowhere. Oh, I found it. I retweeted it because I was like, this is I said this is really bad if true over on my
Yeah.
Twitter account. But it was from Black Insurrectionist at .net YouTube was a username. It
Yeah.
said, "Okay, Tim, I guess now would be a good time to drop my October surprise. You remember him, right? The real reason you walked away from teaching." So he walked away from teaching, according to this post. The kid who spent the night at your home, the one you went to the gay bar with, the reason the school board had a meeting about you. What do you think, Tim? Should I drop that now or should I wait another week or so? And you know the student you were having sex with, the male student you were having sex with, they don't call you Touchdown Timmy because you were the football coach. Or wait, you lied about that also. You were the assistant coach. What do you think, Tim? You remember the Indigo Girls concert, right? The gay bar, spending the night, and of course the school board meeting. Think it is time? Think it's time, Tim? Touchdown, Timmy, in all caps. You were touchy, all right. And that's the tweet. This is a screenshot of the tweet. I can't find the original tweet from that person, and things like that. But there's nothing verifiable with it. That was on October 11th, so it was about 4 days ago. So there's still possibly time for it to play out more. Who knows?
Like, I mean,
So
you're
we'll
looking
see.
at looking into that handle. He is a right-wing conspiracy theorist. Yeah, he's a right-wing conspiracy theorist who posts stuff like that all the time, apparently.
Okay. That makes sense.
Now, that's based on my entire 10 seconds here of Google Foo. So, take that with a grain of salt as well. But and I think it's important for us. Yeah, I think it's important for folks like us. We're both budding podcasters, but we have an audience, we have influence, to be really careful about that stuff. To go double check that.
Yeah, those things before we go. That's exactly why I wanted to bring it up, because it's like, let's check into this. Have you heard about it? No, I haven't heard about it. Okay, cool. Let's go look it up. Okay, we find it in the Hindu Times. Like, okay, it's probably bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let it go. I'm not gonna give it another thought, kind of thing. Unless
unless something more comes out.
Exactly, and I always maintain the thought in my head: innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. Prove that the person's guilty first, and then I will change my mind on the matter. Yeah. That's just my cross-out thing. When it was the Trevor Bauer scandal, he's innocent. He was proven by a federal grand jury that he was innocent, as a case there. And so it's like innocent until proven guilty, unless, you can convince me otherwise. So,
exactly. You start with that because most people are decent humans, and decent humans don't do that shit. So start from there. And then if they, and when somebody tells you who they are, you believe them.
Yeah, and I don't think someone gets to be the governor of Minnesota without something like that coming up a lot sooner. Unless it was, but there's also ways to make it so it doesn't come out. I mean, look at all the Diddy stuff that's coming out now.
It's easy to do that. And that was kind of my response, because, I'm not a huge fan of Biden. But some of those accusations about inappropriate touching that came out when he first took office, it's like, dude, this guy's been in politics since before I was born. If he was up to something, we would have heard about it by now.
I mean, but being around for that long, you learn you have power, you can pull a lot of strings. And I'm just, for the sake of just, playing devil's advocate there, you never know. You never know. But I think this post was really interesting, and this is kind of where I want to end. And this is kind of where I feel that we're at. It was by Donna Barford. She posted this picture earlier at Donna Barford, DonnaBarford. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. We follow each other on Twitter. That's about as deep as it runs. She posted, corruption runs so deep in D.C. that Democrats and Republicans will not persecute any politicians for fear their own crimes will be revealed. And
I do not disagree.
I don't disagree with that either. And I think it's really important for everyone listening, voting. You need to know very down to your school board who you're voting for, who's on the ballot, who they are, and things like that. Because the corruption runs into money talk or words talk, numbers scream. And so it's important to understand that these numbers will scream. Who's funding them? Who are they being paid by? Every politician is paid by someone. Why I won't get into politics, because I wouldn't accept it, kind of thing. But there's a lot of billionaires on the left that are supporting Kamala, and there's a lot of billionaires on the right that support Trump. There's a lot of big names on the left that support Kamala, and there's a lot of big names on the right that support Trump. Of course, the left is more vocal versus the right. Some people like to say hush hush, like The Rock. We all know he's voting for Trump. Like, come on now. He won't say it, you know, athletes, things like that,
Yeah.
whatever, however much they pay these people for their endorsements, things like that. But I think this really makes sense, especially with the Diddy allegation, especially with
Yeah.
everything going on there. It's all tied together. You can call it a big conspiracy, whatever you want. It's not. I think the
It's
pollution's
just how
really
it
deep.
is. It's just how
Yeah,
power works.
yeah,
And I will say this in favor of Trump, although, I disagree with him fundamentally. I'm not voting for him. When he was elected in 2016,
hmm
the difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party was largely cosmetic. It was a bunch of entrenched money protecting themselves.
yeah,
Trump gave us an opportunity to experiment with a new thing. I feel like that experiment failed. Other people feel like that experiment succeeded. I am glad the experiment happened. And I'm glad that
yeah,
that what it also proved is there's enough people in America who are like, we are tired of this bullshit and we want a different thing. And,
yes,
in the early polling for this election, when they were asked, do you want Trump or Biden? If there was a guy in the United States named somebody else, please God, anybody else, they would have been elected in a landslide.
true.
And we saw that in poll after poll.
Well, that's why RFK Jr., that's why his campaign lasted so long. Because he
Yeah.
was that anybody else.
Yeah.
He was that
and
somebody
he's
else.
a loon. He is an absolute
He is
batshit loon.
fucking nuts. But he
Like,
is ripped. He is ripped out of his mind
yeah,
for his age.
he is. And when to circle back to Joe Rogan, then we'll call it this. When Joe Rogan's like, man, I don't know, that's a bit out there. You know that your conspiracy theories have gone
Oh my
way.
God. Yeah. So, but that's why he did so well for so long. Because he was different, and I think that's what makes that's what gives me hope, is because we do have such a strong system of checks and balances that yes, the next 4 years may suck depending on who's elected, or if either one's elected. It could suck, it could get better, it could get worse. God, I hope it doesn't get worse at least. At least let this be like the basement, the lowest floor that we can go to is where we're at right now with everything, and it's only up from here, and we get back. But 2028 is wide open. I think we see guys like Cuban, Vivek Ramaswamy, The Rock.
I'd actually like to see Cuban take a shot, because I think we could have an experiment very similar to the Trump experiment with somebody who's a little more capable is a meaner word than I want to use, but Cuban he would be better at some of the tasks that are associated with being president of the United States than Trump was. And maybe but still be not viable and from the outside. I could be talked into that. What I'd encourage folks to do for both of us is whether, is it going to suck? Is it going to be better? I hope it won't get worse. There are ways it's going to get worse for some people, or in some people's minds. And there are ways it's going to get better for some people in some people's minds. But how many of those things are going to be absolute deal breakers? And then from there, move forward and try to make this a better, more cohesive country where people feel like they can have conversations like we've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important to have that. Do your research, get informed, stay informed. I definitely want to go look at Kamala's website now, which I'm looking at right now, and it's just filled with donation buttons.
Yeah, and you would not believe how many texts I get from her now.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I don't get.
Yeah, but I'm coming up across a bedtime that I need to go be a part of.
Yeah,
that's
no, I agree.
Promises. Yeah,
I agree.
Right, it's been great talking to you. It's been like 2 hours, man. I could do this for another 2 hours.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate being able to have just an open conversation with you, and I encourage everyone to go get informed. I'm hoping to release this right before the election, so if you're on the fence and you haven't voted yet, early voting hasn't started, then get your ass out and go vote. Either way that you go and vote. This is actually fun fact that I realized today. My first election I voted in was in 2016. Yeah, I'm that young. I turned 18 between 2012 and 2016. Those two elections. Yeah, it was like right after the 2012 election.
So you're somebody in their 30s who's only ever voted for Trump.
Yes, correct.
Which normally wouldn't happen. Like, this is the first time somebody who lost their re-election bid came again in, I think, 100 years.
Yeah, which is crazy, too. Which just says something, too. It just says something that, it's like, okay, obviously people want this guy here. The right nominated him, and they want him in again. I think it takes someone a little bit crazy to want to run for the highest office in the land. You got to be a little bit cynical to want that job.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways,
But yeah, folks, if this is just before the election, I'm a lefty, but I don't care how much you vote as long as you vote or which
yes,
way you vote. Just vote. I do care how much you vote. Vote once.
yes, yeah. Please,
We
gosh,
don't
we
want.
don't need to run into that. No, we don't need that.
Yeah, we
And only
don't.
vote for yourself. Don't vote for anyone that's dead. Don't vote that's anyone
Yeah,
that's not alive. If you get
yeah.
those absentee ballots because the system's not processed and you get one from a dead family member to your address or whatnot, please have the integrity and throw it out.
Shred that
Um,
right there.
yeah,
Yeah,
dead people don't vote. Speaking of shredders, Jason's
yeah.
will shred it for you free of charge.
Apparently.
But
All
Jason,
right.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Your insights
Always a
into
pleasure to talk to you,
navigating the
brother.
complexities of faith, politics, and family and fatherhood safety are invaluable. You're a great part of the community. You're a great part of my work here on the Young Dad podcast and with Patriarchy Principles. And again, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with me and our listeners. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, brother. Take